And if you guys thought I was complaining about the Prydwen tier list before, look what they did with it. They have now taken away stuns and created supports. I'm not gonna lie. I understand why a lot of creators and why a lot of community members are very sad about this. But do you guys remember one of my very, very early sayings about this game? There are two types of characters in this game. There are damage dealers and those who support the damage. You guys remember that? When I categorize supports as the umbrella of supports, I put defense and stun under that same umbrella. DPS and utility, exactly. For me personally, this actually aligns up a little bit closer to my ideal vision of how to rank and how to adjust this game, which is potentially contrary to a lot of other takes. You know, let's say like I know EO's take is very much against this in particular. I think it's okay to put them all together at this point because the supports in this game, it's just a melting pot of all different types of skills. And stunners aren't the only ones that can aftershock. Stunners aren't the only ones that can parry anymore. Supports aren't the only ones that can provide elemental or damage or bonus buffs. This game has grown outside of the mold of just a particular class of characters. And that is potentially to the net positive of the creativity of the game. Hopefully we can start there as a baseline discussion for why we are altering the Zenless Zone Zero tier list to be what it is. Let's firstly take a little overview and check out some of the tier listing changes. Firstly, of course, tier 0.5 Alice. When it comes to anomaly characters, chat, tier 0.5 is probably going to be the top of where they usually land, with the exception of Miyabi, who's just all powerful. When it comes to Alice, she very much heavily relies on your potential secondary anomaly units, potential secondary supporting cast unit to get her to the height of where she needs to be. That is what the 0.5 realm is for. There are caveats within their arguments that could make them tier 0, but don't necessarily make them tier 1 and that they're higher than tier 1, thus the tier 0.5. But understandably, the 0.5 is a little bit more clear than A+. I think Alice being at 0.5 is exactly where she needs to be. Because, again, at the top end, she performs extremely well like a tier 0 unit. However, she requires a lot of those higher end units to just perform within those ranges. You aren't pulling up with Alice, Piper, and Lucy and getting tier 0 performance. It's just not possible. And the only reason, again, this is the only time I'm going to mention this, the only reason why we had the argument of Alice versus Miyabi is because of the niche of the niche vertical investment of the Mindscapes, the M2S1 team versus Miyabi M6R5. A niche of the niche. Not everybody is going to be affected by these changes or by that narrative at all. It just doesn't matter. It only affects like 10 people who pull for M2S1 of each character and are able to compare it with Miyabi. It just doesn't matter. And in fact, it's a net positive because Alice being able to perform at a very, very high level should be seen as a good thing for the game as it diversifies the higher end of the game's potential performance. Because the other side of that narrative, if you don't want Alice to perform that well, is that, hey, do you just want Miyabi to be the only character that you use? No. And it's really not important that Miyabi stays the best character in the game. It just really isn't that important. And in fact, I invite the game to try to find more ways, just like how they're incorporating the Jane 2 here, to be able to raise up the ships of other characters that weren't seen before, aka Sambi, aka the Haramasas right now. All right, but I'm very surprised to see that Jane Doe tier 1 moves up as well, which, I mean, it is the physical anomaly meta, so very, very easily do they move up. I could see them even moving slightly back down once things calm down a bit more. But in regards to the pairing with Alice, these units are very, very strong, and, you know, irregardless of the Mindscapes, I've tried the M0 teams, and I got a 40k clear with not knowing how to do any of the rotations and at the wrong drive disc set on my Yuzuha. So that definitely warrants a tier 1. Next, the big changes to support. Personally, and this is, you know, Again, I like to use a reference to basketball a little bit. Shout out to Stephen A. Smith. This list is fluid. So when it comes to the fluidity of where these units reside within the relative scale of the tier list, you're not saying that Astra Yao is right next to Lighter. It's just not it. And Lighter's not right next to Yuzuha. That's not it. But are they tier 0 in relative guideline and performance? Yes. I would say that Lighter is. Lighter is very, very strong at the F2P level, even though he's a niche stun unit. His niche is so vast because he can affect so many characters. Without, you know, a fire or ice unit, Lighter becomes, you know, tier 2. But within the context of fire and ice, which there are plentiful, that's the reason why he's tier 0. Within the context of the ecosystem of the game. Then Yuzuha, Astra Yao being up here makes sense. Jufu being 0.5, she's incredibly strong, right? Is able to 64 clear with Yishen very, very easily. Is able to be paired with Evelyn, be able to pair with Hugo, arguably with Miyabi as well. Strong. Lycon, strong, versatile. Nicole, strong, versatile. Sukaku, versatile. Trigger, incredibly one of the most diverse characters of this game. Right, has redefined her role twice over. Incredible unit. Although, again, yes, understandably, you would like her weapon. She's on watch list. She's on watch list. Interesting. We'll check out the changelog there. Panyu, tier 1, one of the best teams for Yishen. Pokora, one of the most versatile stun units as well. Tier 1, makes sense. Qingyi, right? Again, fluid list. Would you rather have Qingyi over Pokora? More than likely, yes. But can Pokora contribute to really, really strong teams up here as well? Rina here at 1.5. Again, she's watch list. Again, we would like to see that M1. And then tier 3 for Kaleda. Honestly, I don't think she's tier 3. I think she's tier 2, to be honest. I wouldn't put her on the same tier as Seth just because she can contribute to a lot of the stronger teams, right? Can contribute to Hugo somewhat. Can contribute to Evelyn a lot. Can somewhat be a burst stunner for Yishen if you really needed to get a stunner on that team, it's possible, right? Kaleda can work with Ellen Joe now. Kaleda is great with Soldier 11 as a budget team. I don't think she deserves tier 3. I think she's a tier 2 unit personally. Seth being in tier 3 makes sense. Ambi being in tier 4 makes sense. All these make sense. Niche unit, yup, makes sense. Yup, makes sense. Everything else is pretty spick and span. Let's take a look at the changelog. Here in this update, we merged the stun and support categories into one. The reason being that both character types are filled as supported team characters on the compositions interchangeably. With the change stuns and the old supports, we will now be ranking each other, which we feel closer to how players build in the game. Correct. We have teams now with a stunner and a support. We have 2 stunner teams. We have 2 support teams. We have goddamn 3 support teams. For crying out loud. 2 supports, 1 stun. Like, the diversity within this game, I genuinely think does, you know, warrant this merge. Does it mean that there are some things that are lost within the context? Potentially. But I think it's very, very warranted based on just the blend and just the melting pot that they've been able to create within this ecosystem here of the game. In addition, we're also checking Soldier, partner with Lighter, Jufu, partner with Yishen, Sokaku, partner with Miyabi, and Anton, partner with Astra Yao. Note that partner tags go one way, but not the other. Miyabi's not partner tagged with Sokaku. However, Sokaku is partner tagged with Miyabi, due to needing her reaching the level of performance. Correct. Replacing Alice 0.5 primary DPS is based on her testing. She performs better than the physical anomaly DPS department than the Janes and Pipers. Blah, 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 blah. Also, we wanted to highlight the differences between Alice with her SIG and without is more pronounced than other agents. Correct. And I've talked to you about this earlier, chat. 20 to 30%. That anomaly mastery kicking back the anomaly proficiency. It's faster. She's stronger. The stat stick is just so dang good. It doesn't need to give you an extra passive. It doesn't need to give you like extra bells and whistles when the stats just synergize so well. It is one of the most, and again, this is going to be taken out of context, for one of the most despairing in terms of the performance just because of how Alice is constructed. It just is what it is. And aside from Miyabi, Alice's W engine might be one of the second best anomaly engines in value for the corresponding character. Speaking of the devil, Alice on release with the momentum from Yuzuha shifted towards physical anomaly in the endgame. I agree. You still have to consider the environment when it comes to the tier list PvE. The environment wants a physical anomaly. Jane Doe moves up. Piper moves up. Makes sense. Kaleda, tier 2 to 3. We move Kaleda to the niche bracket since Kaleda providing little buffs in spite of her big ability to apply daze with more and more stun agents, alternatives releasing such as Trigger, Jufu, Pokora, as well as Lighter always being a stronger option. Kaleda is a part of, she finds herself easily replaced. I agree. Again, she's a standard unit. Standard units are getting washed out by the increasing amount of limited agents nowadays. Ben moves to a DPS. Finally! Wait, this is the change we needed. Yes! Yes, Ben is a DPS. Finally, we recognize it. All right, go to tier list. All right, it's peak. It's peak. Wrap it up. Peak. It's wrap it up. All right, this tier list is correct. Let's move on. Finally, they moved Ben to a DPS because God forbid anybody would consider him as a support unit. Him as a DPS, you know, converting the defense to attack scaling, it just makes sense. Just off of the numbers alone. Him as a support, it's ass. He sucks. He doesn't support, but he can output some pretty decent numbers, again, which are very niche, but he is much, you know, more of a DPS than he is a support. So I'm very glad that we made this change. Finally, it's taken over a year. Holy shit. But great change here. I like this, actually. He is not a support unless they buff Ben somehow. Sokaku partner tag with the tier list based off synergy with Miyabi right now until later down the road. We'll see. Lucy, Caesar, Rina also watch list. All three supports are outliers of the current tier list that they're underperforming, which again, we'll have to see in 2.2 because I think 2.2 will be a lot more telling of the Rinas and potentially the Lucys. Again, electric, fire. You know, just to speed run this tier list a little bit, I think they made great changes personally. I know this might be a little controversial because other people do enjoy the stunner category and do enjoy that a little bit more nuance. But for me and my stance on how this game has evolved, I think it's actually very, very fitting for where the game's at right now. Make sure to comment and like and subscribe for more ZZZ content because we're heading to 25K if we're not at 25K already. All right, thank you so much for watching. All right, bye.